Hey guys, tonight we slip barefoot through velvet corridors, past oil lamps that flicker too slowly, as if reluctant to light what they're about to reveal. Tonight, we explore the Roman imperial palace not from the point of view of emperors, or senators, or even noble guests. No, you're not any of those. You're a child, a boy, and you're not here because you want to be. The floors are polished with crushed marble dust. They make no sound under your steps, but they will scrape your knees if you fall. You carry a bronze tray that's far too heavy for your arms. One drop and you'll be whipped again. Two, and well, you probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, post your location and local time in the comments. Let's see how far this story reaches tonight. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The Golden Palace sleeps, but not all who dwell in it do. Not you. You've been awake since before the sunrise drum. Back then, the corridors hummed with footsteps, scribes, slaves, soldiers. Now, it's quieter, but not silent. The imperial court never truly rests. Somewhere above you, a senator's mistress laughs too loudly. Somewhere beneath you, a guard drags a prisoner toward the cellars. The stone eats the sound. All that's left is the echo of chains on steps. And here you are, 10 years old, maybe 12. You're not sure, tiptoeing through the most powerful home in the world, and holding your breath like it's the only thing they haven't taken from you yet. You pass a statue of Apollo. He watches you. All the statues do, even when their eyes are made of stone. You feel them notice when your pace falters or your grip trembles. You learned to smile at them once. The older boys told you it helps. You're not sure if they were joking. This is Domus Aurea, Golden House at least. What's left of it? The main palace isn't gold. Not really. That was just the poet's trick. But at night, by torchlight, the painted ceilings shimmer like they might catch fire. The walls gleam. The air itself smells like incense and sweat and something older, like the ghosts of sacrifices past. You're not supposed to see half of what you see here. That's what makes you dangerous. That, and the fact that you remember. You remember being taken. Your village had figs. That's what you cling to now. Figs and goats, and a little stream you weren't supposed to play in. You remember your father's voice. You don't remember his face. When they dragged you to the port, you bit someone. That's how you lost your front tooth. The merchant who bought you called it good fire. The guards who beat you called it stupid. You were sold twice before your voice even changed. Now you belong to the imperial familia, not as family, as property. But don't worry, you're not alone. There are dozens of you, young boys in soft tunics and stiff sandals, sleeping in corners, crouched by doors, always listening. Most of you speak different languages, but fear doesn't need translation. When the steward speaks Latin, you learn quickly, faster, lower, smile, don't look. Your name is gone. Here, they call you something short, something Roman. If you ask about your old name, someone slaps you. If you answer to the wrong one, someone worse does. And you do answer, because you want to live. Some boys here don't. Not really. There's a boy from Numidia who hasn't spoken in weeks. He just stares at his reflection in the basin, tracing the scar where his ear used to be. You think about asking what happened, but you've seen enough to guess. The imperial court has rules. They're not written, but they're enforced. Never make a noble wait. Never look at the emperor too long. Never laugh unless someone richer laughs first. And never, ever be alone with the chamberlain after dark. That last rule is whispered. The older boys tell it in the servants' quarters like a campfire tale. You nod like you understand. You don't. Not yet. Tonight, you serve in the garden vestibule. The mosaics under your feet show gods chasing nymphs through forests of green and gold. Their eyes are too wide. The nymphs never smile. One tile is darker than the others, stained from something no scrub brush could erase. No one speaks of it. You wait, perfectly still, while courtiers talk politics over honeyed wine. They don't look at you. That's good. Being noticed means being questioned. Being questioned means being punished. A noblewoman drops a grape. It bounces, rolls, stops near your foot. You drop to one knee, pick it up, and set it silently back in her bowl. She doesn't thank you. She doesn't even blink. Later, you're allowed a mouthful of barley and a fig. It's soft. Too soft. You chew anyway. Then comes the strangest sound of the night, a giggle. Not from a child, but from an emperor. Nero's mood swings like a pendulum greased with wine. Tonight, he's merry. That means you won't be beaten. Probably, he plays his lyre for a crowd that claps on cue. You kneel nearby, eyes down, heart still. When he finishes, they cheer. You join them, 3 claps too late. You're lucky. He doesn't notice. He likes music, this emperor, and cruelty. He once fed a senator to dogs for bringing the wrong kind of fish. Then he sang about it. Some people say he fiddled while Rome burned. That's not true. Historians still argue whether fiddles even existed then, but they agree on this. He liked to watch things fall apart. You wonder what it's like to have that kind of power, to order another boy's death like it's a room service request. Then you remember that your thoughts aren't safe here, not even in your own skull. The moon is low now. The torch is dim. Someone rings the brass bell. That means your shift is done. You bow, back away, and return your tray. Your fingers are blistered. You don't feel them anymore. In the sleeping quarters, boys lie like discarded dolls. Some snore, some twitch. One murmurs in a language you forgot the sound of. You lie down, curl up, and pretend your blanket is warmer than it is. You dream of figs and of fire. You wake before the light. Again, there's no sunrise in the slave quarters. Just a soft earthy darkness and the sound of someone crying through their teeth, trying not to wake the others. The floor beneath you is cold and still. Smells faintly of vinegar. The last boy to sleep here wet himself. You're careful not to shift too much. The rustling might earn you an elbow or a command, and you've learned to conserve your bruises. They come often enough without your help. When the door opens, it opens fast. A steward barks a name that isn't yours, but you rise anyway. Everyone does. You shuffle out in a line of shivering limbs and threadbare tunics. You don't speak. You don't cough. You don't even dare glance toward the end of the hallway, where the older boys sleep, the ones assigned to personal service. The ones who get silk to wear and bruises you're not allowed to ask about. Outside, Rome is waking up, which means you're already behind. The slave market begins its day long before the streets fill with perfume and politics. At the forum's edge, near the temple of Castor and Pollux, the air smells of iron, sweat, and amphora wine spilled 2 days ago and left to rot. You know this place, not from a tour, like a senator's child, but from memory. You were here, once on a plinth. There's no use romanticizing it now. You weren't discovered like a hidden jewel. You were bought like bread. Back then, the sun was so bright it felt like punishment. You were stripped, oiled, turned around twice. A man in a green tunic poked your ribs and nodded like he was buying a melon. Another pulled your lower eyelid down and muttered something about jaundice. You didn't know what that was. You know now. Too yellow, and they think you're sick. Too pale, and they think you'll die. They want sturdy. They want beautiful. They want pliable. You cried. The merchant told you to stop, or he'd break your nose and sell you as labor. You stopped. Next to you stood another boy, taller, with curls like polished bronze. He was quieter. When someone asked his name, he lied. You watched him do it, calmly, with no fear. You tried to copy him, but your voice cracked. That was when the merchant decided you were best sold as a house slave domestic material, he said, pinching your cheek like you were furniture. No one tells you what the red chalk means until it's too late. They marked your foot with it. It means you were imported, foreign-born, expendable. It also means cheaper. Some boys fetch gold. You fetched half a silver bar and a bowl of olives, and now you're one of them. You passed the market again this morning, just for errands. You're older now, sharper, but not free. You're with a small group sent to fetch honeyed loaves, olive oil, and fresh ink. The palace uses ink like water. All those letters, all those secrets. Sometimes you wonder how many deaths are written in fluid strokes of black. The market is loud. Barkers shout in Latin, Greek, Punic. Children dart between baskets. Some wear chains. Some don't need them. They've learned to obey without metal. You see a new shipment arrive. They come off the boat like shadows half-starved, blinking at the light, some still with hair matted from the journey. One boy throws up as soon as he touches land. The slaver doesn't even flinch, just smacks him and drags him forward. It takes all your strength not to look at your own reflection in their eyes. A woman passes carrying figs. You think of your mother, or the woman who might have been your mother. You try not to. It makes your chest tighten, in a way that doesn't help with obedience. Longing isn't useful here. Instead, you focus on the list tied to your wrist. The steward's handwriting is clear, but you've memorized it anyway. No mistakes, no returns, no questions. At one stall, a man offers you a treat, a date, fresh and sticky. You hesitate. It could be a trap, but he winks. He's missing 3 teeth. He hands you the fruit, laughs, and says in Greek, "You've got palace fingers. Haven't worked a field in your life." You take the date. You bow. You walk away quickly. You save the fruit for later, something sweet, not because you're hungry, but because you need to feel human again. Historians still argue whether Rome's child slaves were always so young. Some say boys were only taken after puberty, once. Their usefulness became clear. Others believe children like you were preferred malleable, forgettable, easy to reshape. You know what's true. The ink merchant gives you a smile. He's polite. You wonder if he has a son, if he knows that his ink will be used to forge death sentences, fake love letters, or scribble a noble's drunken insult that might end someone's life. You carry the supplies back uphill. Your feet bleed through thin sandals. A boy next to you stumbles. He's hit. You help him up. You're not supposed to. Back in the palace, you find a surprise. A new boy. He sits in the atrium, blinking like he's forgotten how light works. His hands tremble. His tunic still carries the merchant's stamp. You see the red chalk on his heel. He will be renamed tomorrow. Tonight, he doesn't speak. He just stares. You recognize the look you wore at once. Later, when the others sleep, you leave your bunk quietly. You still have the date from the market. You press it into his hand. He doesn't say thank you, but he doesn't let go. Some things in Rome are bought, some are taken, and some rare, dangerous things are given freely. Like kindness, like memory. You don't see the eunuch's knife until the last moment. They keep it wrapped in purple linen, as if the fabric might hide what the blade does. But the cloth doesn't muffle the sound when it's unsheathed, a quiet ring, like a coin dropped on marble. You've heard it before. Once, while delivering a message. Another time, in a courtyard where no one was supposed to be. Now, it's your turn. The chamber is small, too clean. The smell of vinegar is overwhelming, meant to ward off infection. They say you doubt it's for your sake. Infection is bad for inventory, bad for the books. You're not alone. 2 other boys kneel beside you. One bites his lip hard enough to draw blood. The other stares at the wall like he's already left his body. You wonder if that helps. The man in the center doesn't look cruel, That's the worst part. He looks like someone's uncle. Balding, steady hands, calm voice, but he's a specialist. A surgeon, they call him, though not the kind who saves lives. He adjusts his tools with the same care a baker gives his loaves. Forceps, hooks, a bronze, scalpel polished to a mirror's edge. You wonder if you'll see your own face in it before you scream. You're not told why. Not really, you're just told to kneel, to be still. That service to the emperor requires purity. That this is a great honor. You've heard the stories whispered among the older boys. That some survive without speaking for days. That others don't survive at all. That some bleed out on the marble because someone slipped or sneezed or didn't care enough to be gentle. You try to swallow, but your mouth is dry. A woman enters. She wears gold thread on her tunic and doesn't look at any of you. She's here to observe. Quality control, maybe. Or maybe she just enjoys it. Some do. Historians still argue whether all palace slaves were castrated, or only those assigned to sensitive roles: chamberlains, singers, bath attendants. The official scrolls are vague, but you know this. The ones who serve closest to the emperor are always quiet, always soft-voiced, always walking as if carrying a pain they no longer remember the source of. Now you understand why. The knife flashes. The room spins. When it's over, you don't cry. Not out loud. You're too numb. Someone bandages you with cloth that burns against your skin. You're told not to move. That if the bleeding starts again, they won't stop it. You lie in a cot that smells of old sweat and medicinal herbs. The walls are painted with scenes of pastoral peace goats, nymphs, olive trees. You hate them. Across from you, the boy who didn't flinch is vomiting. The one who bit his lip has fainted. You just stare at the ceiling, counting cracks. 1, 2, 3, 4. You count until the pain comes. Then, you count through it. No one tells you how long the recovery lasts. Days, a week. Long enough to forget what it was like to run without flinching. Long enough that when you try to sit up, the world goes sideways, and your hands can't find the floor. When you're finally strong enough to walk, you're given new clothes, finer, softer. There's a sash, a comb, and a bottle of rose oil. A small reward, they say. You're ready for special service now. You look at yourself in the polished bronze mirror. Same eyes, same lips, but something is missing. And not just from your body. They took your edge, that little spark of defiance, the one that made you flinch when shouted at, the one that once made you spit at a merchant's feet. It's quiet now, not gone, just buried. At night, you lie on your side to ease the ache. The other boys don't ask. They've all been there. One of them, older, once tried to describe it to you how afterward. The world seems like it's being viewed through a thick pane of glass. You can see it, but it's no longer yours. You speak differently now, slower, smoother, more careful. They train you to pour wine, to fold togas, to massage temple knots without asking questions. They want obedience, elegance, silence. Once, a noble drops a ring and you catch it before it hits the floor. Everyone claps. They say, "Quick hands." See, it didn't ruin him. You wonder what would have happened if you'd let it fall. Some nights, the pain comes back. Not physical, deeper, like a thought you're not allowed to finish. You press your fingers to your abdomen and wait for it to pass. One morning, the steward tells you you'll be reassigned, upgraded, a private servant in the imperial quarters. You nod, you bow, you don't smile. In the hallway, you pass the surgeon again. He doesn't look at you. He's busy talking to a scribe, holding a list. Another name is being summoned. Another boy will kneel soon. Maybe one you've met. Maybe one who smiled too much. You walk on, softer now, lighter, not because you're healed, but because there's less of you to carry. They say knowledge is power, but in the palace, knowledge is a leash. You'll learn this the hard way, curled on a marble bench beside your new master. listening to him debate politics with a man whose sandals cost more than your entire village. The room is warm, full of incense and quiet laughter, but you barely breathe. You are not a person here. You're a presence, a shadow, a hand that pours wine, and a body that knows when to bow. And most importantly, you are a memory. A walking, breathing recorder. Every word you hear is a word you must never repeat. Your master is a praetor, middle-aged, thin-lipped, and always cold. He never raises his voice, which somehow makes him more terrifying. When he looks at you, it's not like your furniture. It's like you're a mirror, and he doesn't like what he sees. Your job is simple. Sit, watch, listen. Then, after the guests leave, he tests you. What was said? Who said it? What did their tone imply? Did they glance left or right when mentioning the emperor? Were their hands still? You get it right mostly. But once, just once, you forget the exact phrasing of a senator's opinion on grain tariffs. You stumble. Your master pauses. Then he backhands you so fast and so hard that your ear rings for hours. You don't cry. That, too, is part of the education. Later, you're assigned a scroll and stylus. You practice letters until your fingers cramp. You write on wax, tablets, quotations, names, court gossip, imperial schedules. You're not supposed to understand what you're writing, but of course you do. There's a girl who teaches you in secret. Her name is Livia. She's not much older than you. She tends the garden paths and sings to herself when she thinks no one's listening. One day, she sees you copying Latin phrases into a tablet and snorts. "You're writing it all wrong," she says, plucking the stylus from your hand. You stiffen. You're not allowed to speak freely. But she doesn't seem to care. She teaches you to conjugate verbs and fix your loops. She shows you how to hide notes in the folds of your tunic and how to read expressions like you'd read a line of poetry. She says, "In here, the smartest slaves last the longest." You ask, "What happens to the others?" She just smiles. Not kindly. The palace calls this education, but it's not the kind that frees you. It's the kind that chains you deeper. With every new word you learn, you become more useful and therefore harder to let go. Some slaves dig trenches, others bleed in the arena. You're being trained to become a living ledger, a creature who remembers everything and says nothing. Historians still argue whether these memorizing boys truly held court secrets, or if later, stories romanticized their roles. But inside the golden walls of Domasaria, no one questions your value. You're now a risk and a resource. One afternoon, you're summoned to a private salon. There, reclining on a couch, is a noblewoman dressed in sea-green silk. She sips watered wine and watches you approach with the same interest she might give a rare beetle. "Is this the one who remembers everything?" she asks your master. He nods. "Try him." She smiles like a cat about to break a toy. "Repeat what I say," she orders. She launches into a complex phrase about military movements near Gaul, veiling treason in metaphor. You repeat it, word for word, even her tone. She claps. "Lovely," she says. "You'll be a target before you grow chest hair." After she leaves, your master gives you a look you don't understand. Not pity, not pride, something colder. That night, he burns your tablet. "Too much writing," he mutters. "Better if it stays in your head." You start to dream differently. Not of figs or streams, but of voices whispered, urgent, echoing down marble halls. You dream of names repeated like prayers and words you shouldn't know. Conspiracy, betrayal, exile. You wake with the phrases still on your tongue, and a pressure behind your eyes like your skull's too small to hold it all. The more you learn, the less you sleep. Sometimes, the tutor comes, a Greek man with ink-stained hands and eyes like a winter sea. He tells you stories of Homer and Herodotus. You listen, but you know better than to ask questions. Once though you do, why do? They teach us so much. if we're not allowed to use it? He tilts his head. Ah, but you are using it. Just not for yourself. He walks away without explaining. You begin to notice things. The way the emperor leans closer when a certain general speaks. The way wine flows faster when bad news arrives. The way your master stiffens at certain names: Brutus, Sejanus, Britannicus. You're part of something now. Not the court, not the empire, something quieter. Something with no name. A boy from the kitchens slips you a note. He doesn't look at you. You don't open it right away. When you do, it's a list. 5 names. One is a senator's son. One is your master's guest from last week. You burn it. You say nothing. Because now, you understand what your real education is for. Not reading, not writing, but knowing what to forget and what never to say out loud. You don't know when it happened exactly. Maybe it was the day you stopped flinching when they called your name. Maybe it was the first time a noble whispered to you instead of shouting. Maybe it was just slow like rot creeping into wood beneath a layer of polish. But at some point, your face became important. That's what they tell you. Your cheekbones, your lashes, the way your mouth curves when you're trying not to speak. You look pleasing, delicate, presentable. You hear these words passed around like currency, always just out of reach. You thought being a slave meant hauling, bleeding, obeying, but here, in the palace, beauty is a weapon, and you're about to be sharpened. They start with oil, rose, myrrh, and sometimes one so bitter it stings your eyes. They rub it into your skin until it glows, then press chalk and crushed pearl into your cheeks. You want to protest, but you've learned better. Next comes the hair. A Greek slave trims it not too short, not too long, just enough to keep the curls soft and the back of your neck clean. He doesn't speak. His hands are gentle, but his eyes say nothing. You wonder if he was pretty once too. They give you clothes that barely cover anything, silks that cling, tunics that fall off one shoulder like you're lounging even when you're standing at attention. A new sash, gold thread at the hem. You've been selected, they say, for visual service. It means you'll be seen, and seen means judged. Your duties shift. You're placed closer to the emperor, but not close enough to speak. You stand, near columns, statues, doorways always just inside a powerful man's eye line. You pour drinks with one hand and balance a bowl of fruit with the other. You kneel gracefully. You don't blink too much. You smile with your lips, but not your teeth. Some nights, when the court is bored, they parade you. Yes, like that. You and others like you are lined up, oiled, brushed, and walked silently into rooms where senators drink too fast and laugh too loud. Sometimes it's for a guest. Sometimes it's just the emperor showing off. The way he shows off his pearls, or his pet tiger. You learn to stand straighter. You learn to endure the stares. And you learn quickly who not to meet eyes with, because not all admiration is kind. There's a general who touches too long, a priest who smells of old incense and speaks to you in verses, a noblewoman who once brushed your cheek with her fan and said, "If only you were older." You were 12. Livia, the girl from the garden, catches you crying one night. You've smeared rose oil on your sheets, trying to scrub it off your skin. She doesn't speak. She just takes the bottle from your hand and sits beside you. "You're not the first," she says, "and you won't be the last." She tells you a secret. Beauty has power. Not real power. Not sword and power, but the power to make others uneasy, to draw out truth, to survive. They want to look at you, she says. Fine, let them, but see them, too. Really see them. That's where your weapon is. You remember that the next time the general lingers near you. You hold his gaze a moment longer than expected. Not flirtatious, not fearful. Just enough to make him blink first. Still, it doesn't make the rest easier. There are whispers about boys who were too beautiful. One vanished. One was sent away. One, well, no one talks about him anymore. Historians still debate how normalized this kind of objectification was in elite Roman circles. Some argue that boys like you were used as ornaments, others that you were simply victims of luxury gone sour. But no scroll, no scribe, no senator's memoir truly captures what it feels like to be reduced to a set of pleasing angles. There's a painter who visits the court. He wants to sketch you, says your face reminds him of a minor god. You sit still for hours while his brush scrapes the parchment. You try not to cry when he adjusts your jaw with 2 fingers and says, "No, no less sadness, less sadness." You memorize his face. You memorize all their faces, because you've learned that being beautiful in this palace is like being gold leaf precious. Yes, but easily scraped, easily melted. So you learn other things too. How to enter a room without being noticed. How to cry without making a sound. How to eavesdrop from behind a curtain. How to make yourself useful enough to keep, but not so memorable they think about you too long. Your looks may have bought you visibility, but your mind will be what keeps you alive. It begins with a whisper. Not from a senator or a general. Not even from the steward. It's one of the stable boys, passing a bucket too quickly, muttering, just loudly enough for your ear to catch. They're feeding the lions again. That shouldn't be unusual. The emperor keeps dozens of animals, tigers, bears, even peacocks in chains. But there's something in the boy's tone. Something tight, something knowing. You ask no questions. But later, when you're carrying fresh towels to the bathhouse, you take the long way. Past the southern courtyard, past the columns where the shadows lean longer than they should. And there you hear it. Not a roar, not a growl, just the soft, almost shy sound of chewing. The lion is behind bronze bars, its mane matted with honey and dirt. Beside it, 2 guards stand stiff. One smokes a fig leaf cigar, the other has blood on his boots. You look down, you walk on, you never speak of it. Because in the palace, the punishments are creative. It's not just the arena anymore, not here, not for the important ones. Out there, in the Colosseum, slaves die loudly for public pleasure. But in the emperor's home, death is private, inventive, and quiet. You're tasked next with delivering perfumes to the empress's wing. A rare errand. Her quarters are usually off limits. The rumors about her, endless, that she poisons her own wine for immunity. That she keeps a book of deaths under her pillow. That she once punished a servant for sneezing during her nap. The corridor leading to her rooms is empty, silent. Even the air feels held in. As you reach the door, a hand snatches the tray from you. A eunuch in gold-trimmed robes. His face is blank, but his fingers tremble. "You didn't see anything," he says softly. "And you didn't hear her scream." You nod. He lets you go. You're learning the language of survival. Now not words, but silences. Not reactions, but stillness. That night, another boy vanishes. You remember his name, just barely. He was smaller than you, always humming songs from some river city no one else had heard of. You shared figs once. He called you his brother. He's gone by morning. The stewards say he was reassigned, that he's been sent to the coast to serve in a bathhouse. But his cot is empty, and the garden where he used to sit has been washed twice. You know better, so do the others. They don't speak of him. They just eat their rations a little more quietly. They bow a little deeper. In the kitchens, the cook tells a story of a boy who spilled oil on the emperor's sandals and was sewn into a leather sack with a snake and a dog. Of a girl who said the wrong name in her sleep and was drowned in honey. Of a scribe who misquoted a senator's letter and woke up blind. You laugh nervously. The cook does not. You deliver a scroll to the scriptorium and pass a pair of guards, standing over a bound man. Not a boy, a grown man. His robes are expensive, or were before the blood. You don't know his name, but you recognize the ring on his finger. He once called you decorative. He doesn't see you now. His eyes are swollen shut. The guards nod at you. You bow and move on. Historians still argue whether these punishments were state-sanctioned or merely the whims of a mad ruler. Nero is infamous for cruelty, yes, but was it truly this personal? Or have the tales grown teeth with time? But you don't need a historian. You were there. The fear isn't theatrical. It's logistical, calculated, efficient. Every slave here knows that the line between silent service and public execution is razor-thin and often invisible. There are darker tales, too. The underground rooms. The ones beneath the guest chambers, where no music reaches, where the stones are warm, but not from sunlight. You once saw a steward emerge from a trapdoor, his hands shaking, holding something that dripped. You didn't ask. You cleaned the trail. Later, when no one was looking, you followed the hall. Not far, just enough to see. The door was iron. The lock was shaped like a wolf's mouth, and from behind it, something breathed. Just once. Just long enough for you to know that monsters do exist here. Only, they don't always wear fur. Sometimes, they wear togas. Still, you learn to keep moving. That's the rule. Move, serve, forget. But something else is growing inside you now. Not rebellion, not yet. Just memory. You remember every boy who vanished, every girl who smiled too long, every whisper you weren't supposed to hear, and now you write them down, in your head, in a language no one taught you, just pictures. Symbols, a code made of glances and sighs and stolen moments, a secret archive, your archive. Because one day, someone will ask what it was like, and you'll need to answer with more than silence. Some days, you're invisible. Other days, you're the stage. You stand still in the middle of the dining hall, arms outstretched, while nobles drape togas on your shoulders and argue over patterns. You are not consulted. You are not introduced. You are the mannequin, the model, the breathing rack. They talk about your body like you're deaf or, better yet, furniture. Too thin in the arms, one senator mutters, but the neck's good, swan-like. You don't know what a swan is, not really, but you nod anyway. At night, your shoulders ache from standing, from smiling, from trying to hold yourself, like a marble statue that won't be punished if it topples. One evening, the emperor himself walks past you. He doesn't stop, doesn't touch you, but he says, to no one in particular, this one is well kept, like the Greeks used to do. And just like that, your rations double. You're moved to a different corridor. You get a new tunic. The silk itches, but you smile through it, because in the palace, a single word from him is worth more than gold. They call it cura corporis body service. You're told it's an honor. You're told few boys ever reach this position. You're also told to speak less and listen more. Your new duties are strange. You're trained in sense. Not just how to prepare them, but how to wear them. Cinnamon after bathing, your tutor says, but only when attending senators. They associate it with power. You nod. Myrrh for mourning, jasmine for celebration, and never, ever patchouli near the empress. She says it smells like fear. You massage feet. You fan necks. You learn how to apply ointments with slow, rhythmic pressure. Some masters moan, some fall asleep. One stares at you the entire time and mouths every word you say under your breath. It's unnerving. You're told it's polite to pretend not to notice. One day, you're sent to prepare a bath. The tiles are warm beneath your feet. You test the water with your elbow, just right. You sprinkle crushed violets across the surface. Then you wait. A man enters. Tall, blonde, sharp-toothed grin. Like a wolf who read about manners once and decided they weren't worth keeping. He strips without looking at you. You may stay, he says, slipping into the water. I like an audience. You keep your eyes low. You've seen worse, haven't you? He chuckles. You nod, because you have. He talks while bathing about politics, about betrayal, about how easy it is to bribe the palace guards. He says one of them once smuggled a leopard cub into his villa for sport. You don't react. That's why I like you silent ones, he mutters. You don't judge. Later, he steps out, water clinging to him like dew. You hand him a towel. He doesn't take it. Instead, he leans in, breath hot and wine sweet. You'd be worth a villa on the coast, he whispers. Maybe I'll win you in a bet. You freeze, but only for a moment. Because you've trained for this. Smile, nod, retreat. That night, you write his name down in your mind. In the secret language. In the hidden ledger you've been keeping. One gesture at a time. Livia finds you. After curfew. She's stolen a fig. She splits it with you like a ritual. You saw him, she asks. You nod. She sighs. He once tried to buy me. Said he liked strong women. What happened? She smirks. I spat in his wine. You laugh. Quietly. It's the first real laugh in days. There's a kind of freedom in the bodywork. A terrible, aching one. Because when you are the hands that soothe, the oil that glistens, the breath that waits, you learn what people truly are beneath silk and titles. You feel their secrets in their muscles. You hear their weakness in their sighs. You smell their fear. Historians still puzzle over the layers of Roman elite indulgence. The public baths, the body slaves, the grooming rituals. Some argue it was hygiene. Some say it was vanity. But you know the truth. It was control. The nobleman lies naked and vulnerable while you serve him. He pretends he isn't. You pretend you don't notice. But both of you know, if you had a knife, you could end him. The only reason you don't. They already took your edge and replaced it with silence. Still, not everything is pain. One morning, an old poet asks for a massage. He's frail. His back is lined like parchment. He talks softly while you work. About birds, about stars, about a lover he once had who vanished into the east. You have kind hands, he says. You blink. Kind hands can be dangerous, he adds, if they start to remember what they were before they became soft. You say nothing, but the words coil in your ribs. Because he's right, you're soft now. But beneath that softness, there's still steel. The letter arrives without wax. That alone is strange. Every official scroll you've ever carried has a seal gold black, crimson, stamped with a lion or an eagle or a winged god. This one, just folded parchment. No name, no crest, no warning. It's waiting on your cot when you return from scent duty. You glance around. No one makes eye contact. The other boys pretend you're not there. Livia's not in the garden. The silence feels sharp, like it's pressing against your skin. You unfold it slowly. Inside, one sentence. Asterisk, you've been seen. Your hands don't shake. Not yet, but your stomach turns cold. Because that could mean anything or everything. You've done what they asked. You've obeyed. You've smiled, knelt, bowed, poured. You've massaged bruises and oiled egos. You've spoken only when asked and remembered everything in silence. So who saw you? You read the line again? You've been seen. It doesn't say watched. It says asterisk seen. There's a difference. And in this palace, being truly seen is almost worse than being punished. Because it means someone knows that behind the obedience, there's a mind still ticking. A memory still recording. A soul still intact. You burn the letter. You wait. Nothing happens. Not the next day. Not the next week. But everything feels off. You're assigned to a new guest chamber. One higher up. Closer to the dome. The ceilings here are painted with constellations. And the windows have shutters shaped like eagle wings. There's a new master. A foreigner. Sharp eyes. No smiles. He watches you like a hawk, sizing up a mouse that's maybe, just maybe, too smart to eat without chewing. He doesn't speak for the first hour, just lets you prepare his bath, adjust his cushions, pour his wine. Then he says, "What's your name?" You hesitate. Slaves aren't usually asked. You give him the name they assigned you. The Roman one. The one that doesn't belong to the boy you were before. He nods. "Not your real name, is it?" You look down. He chuckles. "That's fine. Real names are dangerous here." He drinks thought quietly. Then, softer, "Do you know who wrote that letter?" You don't answer. You can't. He smiles. Not kindly. "That's good. Keep it that way." From then on, he treats you differently. Not kindly, but deliberately. He tests you. Slips false facts into casual talk to see if you'll repeat them. You don't. He changes the order of his towels just to watch if you fix them. You do. He drops a ring, then blames you for losing it. The steward finds it in his own boot an hour later. Still, you're not punished. You're being watched, weighed, measured. Livia corners you a few nights later near the kitchens. Her eyes are wide. "Someone asked about you. Who?" "I don't know. They didn't say your name. Just described you." "Exactly." She nods, like they've drawn your bones. You exhale. It's happening. You're being noticed. Not just as decoration, not just as memory, but as something else, useful or dangerous. And in the palace, those two things are often the same. Historians still argue about how organized the internal surveillance of the imperial court really was. Believe Nero kept a network of informants in every wing. Others claim it was looser rumors, suspicions, a web of gossip more than strategy. But inside these walls, you know better. There's a system. You've seen it. Not written down, not spoken aloud, but they're all the same. Eyes in the pillars, ears behind curtains. Words carried like knives on the backs of boys who don't even know they're bleeding. The foreigner tests you one last time. You find a second letter beneath. You're Matt. Same handwriting, different message. Asterisk tonight. Speak nothing. Bring the small wine bowl. That's all. You do as told. You carry the bowl. Walk the same path you've walked 100 times. You pass 3 guards. None stop you. One nods. You enter a room lit only by one lamp. The foreigner's there alone. He gestures for you to pour. You do. He drinks, then leans in. "I knew your type existed," he says, "but I didn't expect to find one so young." You don't reply. He places something in your hand. Small, cold, a coin. No dot, a seal. "You'll need this," he whispers. "Soon." You nod. Then you leave. You don't look back. That night, you lie awake, staring at the ceiling. Not counting cracks. Not remembering names. Just not thinking about the line, asterisk, "You've been seen." And maybe, just maybe, that isn't a threat. Maybe it's an invitation. You don't speak of the seal. Not to Livia. Not to the stewards. Not even to yourself. When you're alone and sleepless, and your fingers twitch to check that it's still tucked beneath the lining of your sandal. It's there. Small, round, smooth. Stamped with a crescent moon, and something else. Maybe a flame, maybe a dagger. You don't recognize the symbol. But someone once told you that symbols in the palace aren't just decoration. They're permissions. Keys that unlock rooms, people, and fates. You don't know what this one opens. Not yet, but you know you've been marked. Days pass without incident. You serve meals. You sweep corridors. You deliver scented oils and retrieve perfumed towels. The routine lulls you, almost, until something shifts. The boy who sleeps 2 cots down disappears. Again. This is the 3rd this month. No reassignment scroll. No whisper of promotion or punishment. Just a cold folded blanket in the morning, where warmth should have been. No one says a word. But you notice the steward's expression when he comes through inspection. He lingers at the empty cot, stares too long, then moves on. Later, you overhear two scribes murmuring, just fragments. Too young, even for her, won't keep quiet forever. In one sentence that sends a chill crawling up your spine, they're building something beneath the west wing. That night, Livia meets you behind the herb garden. She's pale, shaking. She doesn't look like the girl who smuggles figs and rolls her eyes at senators. She looks like someone who's seen something they weren't meant to see. They're not just disappearing, she whispers. You wait. They're experimenting. What kind of not? With herbs, not with poisons, with people. You don't understand at first. Then she says it again, slower. They're changing them. You've heard of the court alchemist. An older man with a limp and a voice like whetstone. He keeps to the lower floors, near the smoke chambers. No one enters his wing unless they're summoned. Sometimes, when you pass, you hear metal hissing or soft sobbing, but you never asked. Livia did. She cleaned his floors once, scrubbed his tables, saw the flasks and cages, and the pale boy curled up in the corner, eyes black, like obsidian, muttering in Greek. That boy's gone now. They're testing something, she says, on people like us. Because we're quiet. We don't have names. You can't breathe. You can't tell anyone, she adds. Not yet. You nod, but in your chest, something cracks open. Not fear. Not yet. Not even anger. Just awareness. The seal in your sandal feels heavier that night. Not just like a key, but like a choice. A week later you're called to a new duty. Night service. It's a rotating position. Most slaves dread it not because it's hard, but because it's unpredictable. Some nights, you light lamps. Other nights, you listen to the empress weep through the wall. Sometimes you're asked to fetch honeyed wine or recite poetry. Once, you watched a noble fall asleep mid-sentence and were told to stand still until dawn. Tonight, you're sent to the west wing. Your heart stutters. The corridor is narrow, damp. The lamps flicker too much. You descend a staircase you didn't know existed, carved into stone, not marble. You're alone. At the bottom is a door. The seal fits perfectly into the slot beside it. You pause, then press. The door groans open. Inside, not what you expected. No chains, no cages, no boys crying. Just scrolls, maps, diagrams etched in wax and painted with powders that shimmer in torchlight. And a single man seated at a desk with his back to you. He doesn't turn. You came earlier than I thought, he says. His voice is familiar. The foreigner. You step forward. Slowly, he slides a scroll toward you without looking. You open it. It's a blueprint of the palace, but not the parts you know. This one shows corridors beneath corridors, rooms beneath rooms, hidden chambers and traps, escape, routes, signal paths, and at the center, a symbol, the same one on your seal. The crescent and the flame. We call it the Ember Circle, he says. We watch, we record, and sometimes, when the time is right, we act. You don't know what to say. You've seen enough, he continues. You've remembered more than most. You've survived. That's why you were chosen. For what? He finally turns. His eyes are tired, older than they look. To be our witness. You think of every boy who vanished, every bruise you weren't allowed to notice, every scream muffled by silk, and you nod. Historians still argue whether there were rebel networks within Nero's palace, circles of slaves and scribes who shared secrets, passed warnings, and preserved forbidden knowledge. The records are inconclusive, the names lost, but maybe that's the point. Maybe they weren't meant to be found. Maybe they were only meant to be remembered. And now, you remember. The moment you join the Ember Circle, everything changes and nothing does. On the surface, you're still the same boy, with the scented hands and watchful eyes. You still pour wine, arrange linens, bow on command. But beneath that calm, a current is forming, quiet, relentless. Now, when you walk the halls, you aren't just memorizing gossip, you're mapping shadows. Now, when a noble speaks, you listen. Not for the words, but for the gaps between them. Your world splits into layers. The top, performance. The middle, perception. The bottom, power. And you've learned to walk in all three. You're given tasks, small ones at first. Deliver a note to the bath steward, but don't hand it directly. Tuck it into the third towel on the left. Place a sprig of sage in the Empress's incense. Bowl just one, no more, no less. Repeat exactly the words a guest says to you at dusk. Not aloud, just to yourself. Memorize the tone, the pace. These seem meaningless, but soon, patterns emerge. The towel carried a message in invisible ink. The sage, a symbol of warning. The guest's words were code asterisk. The fox sheds its fur in spring. You asked Livia what that meant. She shook her head. It means someone's about to change sides. She's part of it now too. Not officially, but close. She's smarter than they think, and bolder. You see it in the way she walks still, silent, but no longer scared. Together, you start noticing the others. A boy in the archives, who always leaves one scroll misaligned on the shelf, a sign that someone's watching. A girl in the kitchens, who sings out of tune when a noble known for cruelty enters code for asterisk, don't speak today. A stable hand who never makes eye contact but once dropped a single black feather at your feet. The next day, you heard a steward was found poisoned. None of them speak openly, but the silence is loud. The palace begins to feel less like a trap, and more like a game. A dangerous, lethal game, but one you're learning how to play. Then the guest arrives. Not just any guest. A foreign envoy. Tall, wrapped in layered robes, embroidered with moons. And fish. His voice is low. His gaze never stays in one place. And every morning, he asks for a new servant. You're assigned on the third day. He doesn't look at you, just points to the fountain. You lead him, past the mosaic of Mars, past the statue of the three-faced god, past the corridor with the lion mural. At the fountain, he sits, cross-legged. Sing, he says. You blink. You've never been asked that before. Something Roman, he adds, but sad. You hesitate, then hum something soft, something you heard once from an old bath slave. It has no words, just a melody like a sinking ship. The envoy listens. Then, quietly, how long have you been collecting secrets? Your breath stops. He smiles. It's all right, he says. I'm not here to betray you. I'm here to test you. He tosses something into the fountain. It doesn't splash. You retrieve it. A ring, silver, inscribed with the same symbol as your seal. He stands. The circle isn't just here. It stretches beyond Rome, east, south, even into the provinces. You don't ask why you were summoned. You don't run. But when you return to your cot, your hands are shaking. You speak to the envoy the next evening. He's bruised. New marks on his ribs. He says nothing about them. Just hands you a scroll with no writing. You unroll it. Nothing, just blank parchment. But you understand. Sometimes, silence is the message. Sometimes, no words means asterisk too dangerous to speak. So you begin preparing. Packing nothing, because you have nothing. But preparing all the same. Slipping through tunnels. Memorizing steps. Noting where the guards change, shifts early. Where the smoke already smells heavier. You meet with Livia by the kitchens. She carries a jar of honey, a symbol, now, of preservation. We have to go soon, she says. How soon? She doesn't answer. Instead, she pulls something from her tunic. A coin, not Roman, different, Eastern, carved with two faces. One asleep, one awake. They're ready, she says. The rest of the circle. Tonight, if needed. You nod. But before you can reply, a scream slices through the corridor. Not a loud one, not theatrical, just final. You run, not toward it, away, around. Through the scream came from the archives. When you arrive, the door is ajar. Inside, the old poet is slumped forward, still, silent, and missing a hand. His ink pot lies spilled beside him. On the wall, written in his blood, *Ash forgets nothing. The next morning, Nero announces a celebration, a feast, music, a reenactment of Troy, with the palace as the stage. He says nothing of the murder. No one does, but everyone feels it, like a flinch beneath the skin. You serve at the feast. You carry platters of roasted goose, bowls of figs dipped in honey. You refill goblets. You smile when they joke. You nod when they lie. The palace is glittering, but you know better. You see the cracks in the marble. The soot along the window frames the fear behind the laughter. Livia passes you a folded cloth inside, a tiny vial, clear, odorless. You don't ask. You tuck it away, and the foreign envoy, he disappears before dessert. Just gone. No one notices, except you. The sky that night is red, not from sunset, from fire, but not the fire. Not yet, just a test, a warning, a beginning. You don't sleep, neither does the palace. Not anymore. Historians still debate whether Nero's great fire was premeditated, but those who lived inside his walls knew something was coming. They felt it in their bones, and you've stopped feeling fear. Now all you feel is readiness. The city starts burning 4 days later. You don't see the first flames, but you feel the heat, rising through the marble floors, curling beneath doorways, settling into the folds of your tunic like smoke looking for lungs. The night begins like any other. You're cleaning wine from a senator's robe, trying not to breathe in the stench of garlic and regret. Livia is 2 rooms over, trimming candle wicks. Then the bells ring. Not the temple bells. Not the ones used for weddings or executions. The emergency bells. You've never heard them before. You weren't even sure they existed, but now they toll. Slow, deep, thunder without lightning. You freeze. The steward beside you drops his plate. The guard outside the atrium vanishes into the dark, and outside the palace walls, something glows. At first, it looks like the moon, low, orange, trembling, but then it spreads, and you know, Rome is on fire. The reaction inside the palace is not panic, not yet. It's confusion. People move too slowly. Courtiers murmur. Servants shuffle. Nero isn't seen, and then someone whispers, "He planned this." The words slither. You hear them again near the baths, again in the kitchen hall. The same phrase, in different tongues. He planned this. You meet Livia at the rendezvous point, a corridor near the eastern wall, behind a loose tapestry of Minerva. She's already there. They started it in the merchant quarter, she says, breathless, near the spice markets. The wind's pushing it toward the Senate. Where's the envoy? You ask. Gone, vanished. You both know what that means. Some of the circle escaped, some didn't. A boy arrives next barefoot, soot-streaked. He carries nothing but a key made of bone. You recognize him, one of the He doesn't speak, just hands you the key, then disappears again into smoke. You move. Not out. Not yet. There's one thing left. The archive. The real one. The hidden one. Beneath the palace. Past the false wall in the servants' crypt. You've only been there once. When the envoy showed you how the tiles were laid slightly wrong near the eastern drain. You and Livia head there now. Side by side. Silent as ghosts. The heat builds with every step. By the time you reach the door, your skin is damp, your breath short, but the key fits. Inside, cool air, dust, silence, and hundreds of scrolls. Not of Rome's laws, of its sins, testimonies, names, maps, letters, everything the circle gathered. Everything they didn't dare say aloud. Livia grabs 2 bundles. You take 3, then the smoke follows you in. It curls around the door like a curious hand. You bolt. You don't head for the main exit. You know it'll be swarmed. Instead, you take the tunnel behind the old statue of Janus, the god of beginnings and endings. The tunnel that was sealed last year after rats overran it. You know it still works. The rats told you. The darkness inside is thick. Breathing feels like swallowing cloth. But you run. You clutch the scrolls like they're children. Behind you, Rome screams. You emerge near the Tiber. The river reflects fire like a mirror in hell. Crowds surge along the banks. People weep, cough, flee. Livia pulls you to the shadows. You hide until the sun rises. And even then, the smoke doesn't lift. Rome is burning. The palace gone. Not completely, but enough. The theater wing is ash. The eastern towers have collapsed. The gardens are charred bone, and the golden doors melted. You don't know where Nero is. Rumors say he watched the fire from a tower, singing of Troy. Others say he fled. You don't care. You survived. So did Livia. So did the scrolls. Historians still argue about what burned first. Who lit the match? Why no one stopped it? But you were there, and you know. It wasn't madness. It wasn't even cruelty. It was design. This was Nero's masterpiece. Destruction as performance. He didn't want to rule Rome. He wanted to remake it in his image. From the ashes up, you walk for 3 days, avoiding crowds, changing paths. You reach a village far from the capital. They let you stay in a barn. You share a blanket with Livia. You both pretend to sleep. But every time you close your eyes, you see the scrolls glowing in your hands. History, the real kind. The kind no one wants to believe. And you realize, this is why the circle existed. Not to fight, not to burn, to remember, to outlast the flame. The fire may have stopped, but the burning hasn't. It lingers in your skin, in the silence between you and Livia, in the way every new sunrise feels like a test you weren't told to study for. You stay in the village for a while. Days blur, nights stretch. The farmers are kind, mostly because they think you're just scared orphans. You don't correct them. It's safer that way. You tend goats, carry water, sweep floors. Every task is familiar now, mundane things that remind you of the palace, but without the teeth. But underneath it all, the ember still glows. Livia hides the scrolls beneath a loose board in the barn. You take turns guarding them, not because you think someone will steal them, but because they feel sacred. The circle may be scattered, the palace may be dust, but the truth you carry, it's alive, and that makes it dangerous. Then, one night, a traveler arrives. He's thin, sunburnt, wearing a robe too fine for his worn sandals. You're helping the village cook when you notice him watching you, not with suspicion, with recognition. You freeze. Later, he approaches. You served in the court, he says. It's not a question. You glance at Livia. Her eyes narrow. He doesn't wait for a response. There are others like you, he continues. They're rebuilding. Not in Rome, east, across the sea. You say nothing. I saw your mark, he says softly, lifting his sleeve just enough to reveal a faded crescent burned into his wrist. He knows. He's circle, or was, or claims to be. You have scrolls, he adds. We have scribes. And then, he's gone. Just like that. Livia doesn't sleep that night. Neither do you. You know this was always the plan: survive, preserve, rebuild. But the idea of going back into the web, even from a distance, it feels like diving into smoke again, eyes open. Still, The ember in your chest flares. You remember the poet's warning, *ash forgets nothing, so neither will you. You travel east, not directly, not with haste. You move through forest paths, quiet villages, rivers that don't appear on maps. Sometimes you barter, sometimes you steal. Once, you sleep in the ruins of a burned temple. Livia starts writing. Not copies of the scrolls, but new pages, memories, testimonies, yours, hers, the ones whispered by others you meet along the way. You begin to understand something else. Survival was just the first act. Now comes remembrance. Historians still debate how knowledge survived the Great Fire. If it survived. Some claim slaves smuggled records out under their tunics. Others say it was impossible that Rome's truth turned to ash like everything else. But they forget. Fire destroys parchment, not memory. You reach a port city, not large, but alive, bustling with traders, refugees, whispers, and one tavern with a symbol carved into its foundation, crescent and flame. Subtle, faded, but unmistakable. Inside, a scribe with ink-stained hands, a midwife who speaks 5 languages, a former soldier with burns along his jaw who walks with a cane and a purpose. They don't ask who you are. They already know. The scrolls are stored in a cellar beneath wine barrels. Livia weeps when she sees the space. Not from grief, from relief. It's real. The circle lives. Not just in corners and cracks, but in ink, in stone, in people who know. Longer serve but remember. You spend weeks helping them catalog names, events, maps, rituals, patterns. You speak of Nero's final days, the madness, the murmurs, the fire. They listen, they write. One scribe turns your words into verse. Another copies them onto clay tablets. A third carves a line into bone. Asterisk he sang as it burned, and the silence remembered. The circle debates next steps. Some want to hide the records, bury them for future generations. Others want to send fragments west too. Let the whispers return to Rome like seeds on wind. You and Livia, you choose both. She stays, you go. The day you leave, she presses a small scroll into your hand. Not everything needs to be shouted, she says. Some things just need to be carried. You don't open it. Not yet. You board a ship at dawn. The sky is pink. The sea, still. You stare toward the west, toward the ruins of what was once the center of the world. And you whisper, just once, I remember. The ship creaks beneath you, slow and stubborn against the tide. You sit near the stern, wrapped in a borrowed cloak that still smells faintly of lavender and old wood. Salt clings to your lips. The wind tangles your hair. No one on board knows your name. That's the safest way to travel now. You don't speak unless spoken to. When you do, your voice stays low, casual. You are just another boy escaping a city that forgot how to be kind. But your mind never stops moving. The scroll is still tucked beneath your tunic, tight against your ribs. The one Livia gave you before you left. You haven't opened it. You will, just not yet. The first port is minor, just a coastal town with flat-roofed houses and dogs that bark at everything. You stay one night, long enough to find water, bread, silence. You notice something strange there. A woman in the market who leaves her stall exactly when a soldier enters. A potter who glances at your sleeve longer than necessary. A child with soot on his palms drawing a crescent in the dirt. No, not everyone, but someone. The circle has roots here. You move on. The next place is louder, dustier, closer to the frontier. There, you hear the first story. He's dead, someone says. You pause. The tavern is loud. The voice slurs with wine, but you hear it again. Nero, gone, took his own life, like a coward. You don't believe it at first. But then, A traveler arrives with a fragment of a letter. Not official, not sealed, just scrawled in haste. Asterisk, the tyrant is dead. The empire stirs. Rome mourns nothing. Asterisk, you sit with this for a long time. Not because you grieve, because you feel unfinished. He was your tormentor, yes, but also your constant. The fire you danced around, the hand that hovered over your head, and now, gone. No trial, no reckoning, just silence. Historians still debate Nero's final hours, whether he truly begged for death or embraced it with theatrical flair, whether his last words were poetic or pathetic, whether the dagger was his own or held by someone else. But you picture him alone in a crumbling villa, clutching his lyre, surrounded not by senators, but by ghosts. You travel inland, slower now, not because you're afraid, because you're listening. At every stop, the stories ripple outward. Some call him a monster, others, a misunderstood artist. A few still curse him with a kind of bitter loyalty. And always, there's the fire. The way it gutted neighborhoods, turned families to ash, left survivors with no direction but away. But no one talks about the ones who served him, the boys, the performers, the vanished. You try to tell their stories, in pieces. You share fragments with the people you meet. You speak of the baths, the songs, the silences. You describe a palace of marble and misery, of gold leaf and bruises. They listen. Not always kindly, but they listen. One night, in a city of marble, arches and olive groves, you meet a man who changes everything. He's old, gray-bearded, blind in one eye. He sits beneath a fig tree and tells stories for coin. When he hears yours, he doesn't speak for a long time. Then he says, "Write it." You shake your head. "It's already written." "No," he says. "It's asterisk recorded." "That's different." "You don't understand," he chuckles. "Records are for remembering. Writing is for sharing." You sit with that. And then, under the branches, you unroll Livia's scroll. It's short. Just a list of names. Boys, gone, forgotten, at the bottom. In her careful script, asterisk, if I don't return, you must. That night, you begin writing, not the scrolls, yourself, your memory, your nightmares. You write of the baths and the bruises, of Livia's laugh, of the poet's hand, of the way Nero stared at fire like it owed him something. You write of crescents carved into stone, of symbols hidden in linens, of whispers that kept people alive. And as the ink stains your fingertips, something in you quiets, not peace, not yet, but purpose. You stay in that town for a season, long enough to finish a first copy, then another. You don't know if anyone will read them, but they exist now. They breathe. You leave one with the blind storyteller, another in the corner of a temple, a third buried beneath a new fig tree, wrapped in oilskin and bound with string. Your journey is not over, but your burden, it's lighter now, because even if no one ever finds your words, they've already done their work. They've told the truth, and the truth, once spoken even in ink, never fully dies. The road back west is longer than you expect. Not in distance though, it's hundreds of miles by foot, cart, and occasional riverboat, but in weight, in what it demands from you. You're no longer a servant, not technically. No one owns your body. No steward directs your day. But freedom, as you've learned, doesn't mean peace. It just means you are the one who chooses what to remember. And you remember everything. You pass through cities rebuilding after the fireplaces that still smell of charcoal and grief. Some people have returned. Most haven't. The new streets are narrower, cruder, quick replacements for ancient homes. You recognize none of it, though once, you lived so close to this heart of the empire, you could taste Nero's perfume in the air. A soldier in a tavern tells you they're planning a new palace. Another says they're still searching for documents the fire didn't consume. You say nothing. You still carry your own documents. Not just scrolls anymore, but stitched pages bound with leather, marked with ash, sweat, and memory. A merchant you meet on the Appian Way offers to buy one. You laugh. He thinks it's poetry. It is, but not the kind he's expecting. You've grown quiet over the months. Not she, just precise. You speak when needed. You listen more than you talk. And when people ask you where you're from, you never say Rome. You say, the edge of the fire. And if they understand what that means, you know you're safe. In one village, a boy stops you on the road, 8, maybe 9 years old. His eyes are too large for his face. He says, "Are you the one who remembers?" You freeze. He holds up a stone, carved with a faint crescent. You kneel, not in fear, in recognition. "Yes," you whisper. "I remember." He says, "My sister said I should find you if the sky ever turned red again." You look up, clear blue. Still, you nod. You stay there a week. The boy and his sister, just two of many scattered by the fire, show you where they've hidden their own memories. Little bundles tucked into clay jars, names scratched into bark, stories sewn into scraps of tunic. You help them organize, not just the stories themselves. You don't call it the circle. Not yet, but when you leave, they draw a crescent in the dirt beside your footprints. You don't stop them. You travel through burned fields, abandoned temples, towns with half their signs missing. Rome's new emperor, whoever he is, doesn't matter to you. Emperors come and go. Fire taught you that. But memory, that's harder to erase. You visit an old contact near the coast, a woman who once worked in Nero's bathhouse. She's wrinkled now, walks with a limp. When you show her one of the names Livia wrote, she cries. You sit with her until the candle burns low. She gives you a ring. "He wore this," she says, "every day, until the day they took him." You don't ask what happened to him. You already know. "Before you leave," she says, "they'll try to bury it again." You nod. "Then we'll dig." The next stop is a library, modest, nothing imperial, but it has paper, ink. Quiet. You spend a month there writing. Not everything. Not yet. Just enough. You craft a new version of your record, shorter, more direct. Something someone could read and still breathe afterward. It's not just about telling your story now. It's about teaching others how to keep theirs. You title it, *Ash and Silence. The librarian doesn't ask who you are, just copies it twice before you leave. One copy stays in the library, one goes with you, and one you bury, like a seed. Historians still argue whether surviving slaves ever organized after the fire. Some say the system was too broken, too vast. Others suggest there were whispered, oral traditions, hidden testimonies. They never quite agree. But you've seen the maps, heard the code words in 3 languages, traced the identical carvings in places 1,000 miles apart. You know better. The circle didn't die in the fire. It was forged in it. And now it moves not in shadows, but in stories, in quiet teachers, in strange travelers. No buildings left, just bones of columns, shattered marble, dirt that remembers too much. You don't cry, you kneel, and you press your hand to the soil, not to mourn, to promise. Livia's scroll still rests beneath your tunic. You haven't opened it since that first time. You don't need to. You've already lived it. You never expected to return to Rome's edge and feel calm. Not joy, not peace, but something quieter than fear. Time has blurred the edges of what happened. Here, rubble has become part of the earth. The scent of fire is no longer in the air, but you smell it anyway, in memory, in dreams, in the fibers of your old tunic tucked at the bottom of your satchel. You camp in what used to be a garden. Olive trees once stood here. You remember them, from the palace's high windows. Now there's only cracked stone and weeds tall enough to hide a fox. At night, you light no fire. You've had enough of that. Instead, you let the stars speak. A week passes like this. You don't move. You don't reach out. You wait. And on the 8th day, someone finds you. He's barely more than a shadow when you see him thin-cloaked, walking with a slight limp. You don't run. You simply nod. He nods back. No names are exchanged, just a shared glance. A flick of fingers at the wrist symbol, old but precise. He sits beside you. You're the scribe, he says after a long silence. You say, sometimes. He reaches into his cloak and pulls out a worn piece of wood, a seal, half-burned, stamped with Nero's sigil. I was there when they found him, he says, dead in the villa. Cried like a child. No final song, just shaking. You believe him. I kept this, he says. Not for loyalty, for memory. You offer him a page from ash and silence. Just one. He reads it, lips barely moving. When he finishes, he presses his thumb to the ink. Let's rebuild, he says. Not the palace, the circle. And you realize, you never truly stopped. You begin walking again. Not aimlessly, with intention. Back roads, abandoned villas, camps where displaced children sleep in clusters, learning new languages from traders and forgetting their old names. You carry a pouch of crescent stones now. Carved by hand, you leave them where they'll be found. On the back shelf of a market stall, on the steps of a broken bathhouse, under a tile in a forgotten shrine. Each one whispers, asterisk, you are not alone. One night, in a forest clearing, you meet 3 others. A girl who once polished Nero's sandals, a boy who played flute in the theater until his lips bled, a cook's apprentice who never learned to read, but memorized every name whispered in the kitchens. You don't form a council. You don't make speeches. You listen. You write. You keep going. You hear new stories of emperors rising and falling, of governors sending scouts to hunt circle traders, of certain symbols being scratched out wherever found. But for every one that's destroyed, 2 more appear. On a wall, in a prayer, etched into the handle of a water jug. There is no headquarters, no capital. The circle isn't a place. It's a choice to remember, to witness, to never let fire be the last word. In one mountain town, you meet a boy who's gone entirely mute. He paints instead, vivid, sharp images of palace halls, of chained feet, of stars seen through barred windows. You give him a blank scroll. He fills it with ink, and for the first time, his hand stops shaking. You add it to your satchel. Not because it's beautiful, because it's asterisk, true. You stop thinking of yourself as a survivor. That word felt important. Once like armor. Now you are a vessel. A carrier of voices that would have otherwise been ash. Historians still argue whether memory can survive without record. Whether oral tradition is strong enough to outlast empire. Whether the voices of the enslaved ever made it past the gatekeepers of power. But here you are. Proof. A record with legs. You arrive in a city that claims to have rebuilt its library after the fire. They take you in, feed you, offer you a chair in a small back room, stacked with tablets and scrolls. And when they ask what you want to donate, you hand them only a copy of asterisk ash and silence. The librarian opens it, reads the first line, and doesn't speak for a long time. Finally, she asks, "Do they know?" You shake your head. "Not yet." She nods. "We'll hide it among the records of senators," she says. "No one reads those." You smile and leave. Not because your work is done, because it never will be, but because you've learned something else. The circle doesn't need to be large, it just needs to endure. The wind smells different as you cross into unfamiliar territory, less of ash, more of pine and wet earth. The empire's edge has always been a place of forgetting, a place where names go to disappear, and maps grow fuzzy, and governors rule like kings because Rome can't see this far. It's the perfect place for stories to grow wild, You arrive in a northern town shaped like a circle, stone houses ringed around a well that never runs dry. The people here speak Latin like it's been chewed too long, soft around the edges. They watch you with curiosity, not suspicion. One of them, a weaver, offers you a place to sleep in exchange for a story. You give her 3. She doesn't ask which ones are true. She just weaves them into her next tapestry, bright threads, curling into shapes that no one else in the village quite understands. But you do. A boy with a chain around his ankle. A woman holding a scroll to her chest like a shield. A flame that splits, becoming 2 crescents in the dark. You stay there, longer than you planned, because this town, this odd place at the border of everything, has already begun to remember without being told to. The children know songs you've never sung. One of the elders paints a bird with fire for wings and calls it the Memory Keeper. You ask where he learned the name. He says it came to him in a dream. You don't correct him. Dreams are as good a delivery method as any. In the mornings, you walk the edge of the forest. In the evenings, you write. By the 3rd week, you've crafted a new book, not a record, not testimony. A asterisk parable. A fable disguised as fiction. You call it the palace made of ash. The main character is never named, but he looks a lot like you. You tell yourself this isn't for history, it's for children. So they'll grow up feeling the weight of truth, even if they never see its chains. Historians still debate whether tales told far from Rome retained any of their original meaning. But they underestimate the human gift for asterisk translation, for hiding survival in lullabies and protest in fairy tales. You finish the book and leave. A copy at the town well, tucked behind a loose stone. The weaver leaves a 2nd one in the chapel. A 3rd is copied by a boy who reads it in secret, then draws the crescent on his window with chalk. It spreads. You keep walking. You pass into lands that once feared Rome. Now Rome fears being forgotten by them, and in that quiet gap, you plant stories. You speak of the emperor, who wanted to be fire. You speak of the ones who escaped him not just in body, but in spirit. You speak of memory as rebellion. One night, in a tavern carved into a cave wall, a stranger asks you if the palace of ash was real. You sip your water and say, "What do you think?" He shrugs. "If it wasn't, it should have been." You smile, then it was. He buys you a meal. You leave a scroll behind when you go. By now, your satchel is lighter. You've given away more than you've kept, and somehow, that makes you feel fuller. You meet a girl who was never enslaved, never beaten, never silenced, but who carries grief in her mouth like it's always about to fall out. Her father, she says, worked in the palace, cleaned the mosaics. One day, he didn't come home. She was 5. You don't tell her his name. You just show her the mark burned into the scrolls you carry. The crescent in flame. She touches it. Once, then again. "I've drawn this before," she whispers. "I didn't know what it meant. Now she does." You walk together for 2 days. She teaches you a river song from her village. You teach her how to bind pages without tearing them. When you part, she gives you a lock of her hair. "For the record," she says, "you keep it, because the record isn't just ink and names. It's moments like this. Threads in the tapestry, whispers that refuse to die." The next city is larger, louder, more dangerous. You're nearly caught when soldiers asking questions, burning books they don't recognize. You hide in a tannery for 2 nights. The smell is unbearable, but the old woman who runs it offers you soup and says, "I remember what happened in Rome. My brother was never the same." You ask what happened to him. She says, "He stopped playing music. Then, after a pause, he used to make people cry when he sang. After the palace, he never opened his mouth again." You tell her you're sorry. She nods, then adds, "But he did write one song. Just one. Buried it in the floorboards. I can show you." And she does. It's simple. Just a few lines. But when you sing it quietly, Under your breath it sounds like every silent scream that ever echoed through those marble halls. You copy it. It belongs in the story, even if no one knows who wrote it. You leave the city at dusk, traveling by river now. Water has become your sanctuary, clear, reflective, moving forward. You watch the ripples and wonder how many voices drift beneath its surface. The circle was never meant to be an army, just a current dot, and now it flows everywhere. You see it in the girl carrying firewood with a tattoo of a crescent on her ankle, in the farmer who hums a forgotten lullaby while threshing wheat, and the child who asks you, were there really boys who lived in palaces but never got to play? You say yes, and he says, not fair. You nod, no, but now they're remembered. The roads are quieter now, not empty, just thoughtful, as if the world itself is pausing between breaths, unsure whether to speak or stay silent. The empire still groans with change, but it no longer feels like a scream, more like a hum beneath your feet, a warning, a promise. You walk without rush. You've stopped counting miles, stopped measuring time by days or sunsets. Instead, you measure by stories, by every new voice you carry, every sliver of truth you pass on. Your satchel, once heavy with scrolls, is now filled with pages stitched together by hand, layered with names and drawings and songs. Some are yours, most are not, but all of them matter. You enter a small town where the streets are lined with orange trees. It's the kind of place no senator would ever think to visit. And yet, painted on the side of one house, barely visible beneath climbing ivy, is a crescent, faint, faded, but still there. You knock. A man answers, middle-aged, weather-worn. He looks at you for a long time before stepping aside. Inside, a single room, a hearth, a sleeping mat, and on the wall, behind a curtain, a shelf of hidden scrolls. My son worked in the kitchens, he says. He didn't make it out. You say nothing. He gestures to the scrolls. These are his. You take one, open it. It's a poem, crude, misspelled, beautiful. He'd written it to someone named Aurelius, a boy who used to sweep the bathhouse floor, a boy who made him laugh, a boy he hoped to see again. You copy the poem, leave behind a page of asterisk, ash, and silence. You both pretend this trade is fair. You sleep in the orchard that night, listening to fruit drop gently into the grass. When you dream, it's not of fire or screams, it's of names spoken out loud, like blessings. In the morning, you walk on. You meet a girl who recites the history of Rome through riddles. You meet a butcher's son who turns pieces of bone into ink pens. You meet a former centurion who tells you, I hated Nero, but I still remember the sound of his singing. It wasn't bad. That's what made it worse. In every town, the past is hiding in plain sight. Some people pretend not to see you. Others call you a ghost walker. A few drop to their knees. You tell them all the same thing. I'm just a boy who remembers. In one village, a teacher hands you a wooden tablet with the names of 42 lost boys etched into the surface. They used to be mine, she says. I taught them before they were taken to the court. You ask what happened to her. She shrugs. I survived. Doesn't mean I escaped. You trace the names with your fingers, one by one. She asks, will they be remembered? You promise? You never make promises anymore. But this one you mean, because the circle's not just memory now, it's action. Letters pass from hand to hand coded, yes, but growing bolder. Scrolls arrive in cities before soldiers do. People begin to expect them, to look for the mark. You hear rumors that Rome is trying to erase the fire from its records, claiming it wasn't that bad, that few died, that the emperor was framed. You laugh when you hear that, not because it's funny, because it's asterisk predictable. Empires rewrite, always, but the circle, you write around the lies, through them, past them, in temples, circle scribes, bury pages in urns, in villages, Old women sew names into their shawls. In one town, every child learns a song that ends with "I saw the golden doors melt." That's how you win. Not through war, through asterisk repetition, through persistence, through the quiet refusal to forget. You reach a coastal city that was never touched by the fire. They don't believe your stories at first. Too dramatic, they say. Too dark for children. Too unbelievable. You offer them no proof. Just leave behind a copy of asterisk ash and silence. Weeks later you hear someone's rewritten it into a play. They call it The Palace in the Ashes. You smile, because stories mutate when they live. And that's the goal. You don't need statues. You don't need praise. You just need people to keep talking. You meet a sculptor who never speaks. She hands you a figurine small, carved from olive wood, a boy sitting cross-legged, scroll in hand, fire rising behind him. You keep it, not for yourself, for whoever needs to see it next. Historians still argue how widespread the circle ever became, whether it was a true network or just a collection of coincidences, whether the stories they spread were accurate or exaggerated. They never find the hidden shelves. They never decode the songs. They never ask the right people. Because those people don't live in marble houses. They live here, in orchards, in markets, in places where orange trees grow, beside names etched in stone. You don't stay anywhere. Too long now. You've become part of the message. Someone hears your name, and they say, "I thought you were a myth." You reply, "Not yet." The circle's growing again, not like before. Better, wider, deeper, less secretive. Because secrecy was protection once. Now, it's the truth that needs armor. And the best armor is asterisk memory. You reach a city at the edge of the empire, far enough that even whispers feel like echoes. There, you find something you didn't expect. A school, teaching history, and, in their lesson, a story of boys in golden halls who were never allowed to grow up, and one of them just one who survived the fire and carried the names of the lost across the world. They don't say your name, but you don't need them to. You sit in the back of the room. Listen to the teacher's voice, and for once you let yourself believe. The story has begun to take root. Even here, even now. The wind is colder here. You've come farther than most Romans would ever dream. To a place where the sea grinds against black cliffs and the stars hang low like lamps. Ready to go out? The locals wear cloaks that smell of peat smoke and speak a dialect you can barely follow. But when you pass a market stall, there it is, a painted bowl, crescent and flame. You pause. The woman behind the stall doesn't say a word. She just nods, once, slow and deliberate, like she's been expecting you. Maybe she has. You keep moving. By now, the circle is less a secret society and more a rumor carried by the wind. Most don't believe it's real. Some do. A handful live by it. And you're the one who keeps walking. There's no final destination. No grand temple at the end. No great fire waiting to be extinguished. The empire hasn't fallen. Not yet. But you've felt the cracks beneath your feet. You pass a man on a cart filled with clay tablets. He hums a song you haven't heard in years. You hum the second verse. He doesn't turn around. You stop in a town built into the cliffside. Its roads are crooked. Its houses lean like they're tired of holding each other up. But in the chapel, hidden beneath the pulpit, is a book you helped write copied in someone else's hand, with new verses added. A woman's account, a child's dream, a recipe that ends with a name etched in vinegar. You add a drawing, not of a flame, not of a palace, just a scroll, unrolling forever. A little boy watches you. His mouth is smeared with something sweet. He asks, "Were you really there when it burned?" You meet his eyes, say nothing, because what would you even say? That the fire started long before Nero ever picked up a lyre. That the smoke was only the final verse of a much older song. That you still hear screams when you're too tired to dream. No, You smile, sort of. He nods, as if that answer makes sense. And it does, because for him, the story isn't about fire. It's about remembering, and you've taught him how. You leave that town with a new scroll in your satchel. It's written in a hand you don't recognize, but it begins with a line that hits you harder than anything else has in years. Asterisk to the next one who carries this. Thank you. You sit with that line for a long time, by a river, under a tree, wrapped in a cloak that no longer fits your shoulders. Because you're older now. You've grown. And the burden once too heavy to name has become something else entirely. A gift, a calling, a quiet flame that no longer consumes. It warms, it glows. You think about Livia. You haven't seen her in years. You don't know where she is, but you picture her somewhere quiet, writing, teaching, laughing at how dramatic you used to be. You imagine her telling someone, "We weren't special, we just refused to forget." And that's true. You weren't heroes. You were asterisk witnesses. And that's enough. Historians still argue over the details of Nero's reign, the extent of the fire, the credibility of slave testimony. They debate scrolls with no provenance, stories passed through too many hands, verses that rhyme too neatly to be factual. They'll keep arguing. That's what they do. But while they argue, you keep walking. You leave stories in baskets of grain, in the margins of trade ledgers, in graffiti on cellar walls. You tell them in jokes, and riddles, and lullabies. Because the truth isn't something you shout once from the palace steps. It's something you whisper again and again, until it takes root. You reach one last hill, overlooking a valley where no one knows your name, and you sit. You close your eyes, and for the first time in a very long time, you feel tired in a good way. Like the kind of tired that comes after something, not before. You take out a blank scroll, write one last name at the top, your own. Then, without ceremony, you set it gently beneath a stone, not buried, just placed, in case someone comes looking, because someone always does.